because I can't help anybody out of a pit that I'm not out of myself. I am walking in freedom now, but I also understand that I'm human
Yeah.
and that therapy or prayer, all these things that we advocate for, it doesn't mean that you're going to be bulletproof. We have to be able to face that trauma fearlessly. We have
Yep.
to be able to face it and know that God is going to be right there with us. I had to break free from codependency. And if people are not familiar with that word, it means that if someone else in your life is not happy, then you're not happy, because there really is a peace on the other side that is better than you can imagine. I get to choose how I want to show up in the world. I get to choose
Right.
how I want to live and walk and conduct myself and present. I get to choose how I walk with integrity.
Hey, it's Michelle, and I'm so excited to have you on the Fearless Forward podcast. And if you're new here, welcome. Welcome to the Fearless Forward family. I also want to take a moment and acknowledge that you are spending time here with us today. And I think today you're going to love who we are going to have a conversation with. And that is my beautiful friend, Melissa Miller. She is a content writer, a podcast producer, and she's also an author of Restful Anticipation and a John Maxwell certified life coach. She's a mother of 5 and an advocate for adoption and foster care. She's passionate about helping people reframe their mindset and reclaim their peace one thought at a time. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if you have seen her on her Instagram, where she lovingly shows her family and just the things that they do throughout the day. She's also had some videos pop off on Instagram. So I want you to meet my beautiful friend, Melissa Miller. Let's get into it. Melissa, I am so excited to have you. And you're my first guest.
I
on
feel
my
so
podcast.
honored. That's so special.
I mean, like, we celebrated with a piece of cake on my just the first episode of just the launching, and I had some cake out, and I really do wish I had some leftover cake, because I feel like we need to celebrate this moment, right?
It's a big moment. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Your
Thank you.
studio is amazing, and what a journey it's been for you.
It has. It's been a really fun journey. So I'm just so glad that you are here with us today. But before we get into the depth and deep conversations, I want you to talk to our listeners right now. And I really want you to just share with your heart where you're at and your journey, how you are so in that place of just wanting to spread the message that you have. So will you unpack your story for us today?
Yeah, I grew up with a pretty broken home situation, and I was kind of unconventionally adopted. I was technically in the foster care system, but it was my best friend's family that took me in for a couple years when I was a teenager. And so that was a really rough time. My mom ended up dying, a really tragic death when I was 16. And so I did have a lot of trauma, and I gave my life to Jesus when I was in college. And I heard a lot of pastors say from stage, talk about freedom and talk about wholeness and talk about all you need is an encounter with Jesus. You don't need to go to therapy. So I
Yeah.
thought, well, I'm a Christian now, and I'm all free, and I should just be walking in healing and wholeness. And therapy wasn't a part of my vocabulary. It wasn't a part of the language that I spoke. I didn't grow up in a Christian home. So even these small steps of faith that we take for granted were a huge deal to me, to be able to renew my mind, to be able to think differently about myself, to be able to believe that I have value and worth and that I'm chosen, and that I have a Father in heaven who loves me even amid my brokenness of my broken family and my broken parental situation. To know that I had a parent in heaven that loved me was massive, was huge. So as I began to walk it out, I think I grew increasingly frustrated that I wasn't making, more progress like I saw other people making. But my starting line was so far behind because of all the trauma that I had been through,
Yeah.
that I didn't realize and have language for that. And I wanted to be free in Jesus. And I saw other people free in Jesus. And I wanted that so bad. And the misconception, I think, is that, you're not praying enough. You're not working hard enough as a Christian. You're not a good enough Christian.
Yeah.
But really, I just need someone to give me permission to say, probably should go to therapy. You probably should work on
Yeah.
your processing your emotions instead of suppressing them. And so, obviously, through a process of getting married, starting my family, and becoming a mom and then realizing how wrapped up I was in people pleasing. And I was so
Mhm.
wrapped up in um, overwhelm. I was overwhelmed, saying yes to everything, burnt out, trying
Mhm.
to prove my worth.
Mhm.
And so it was just the process of moving to Florida and kind of getting a fresh start there and being around healthy Christian communities, healthy churches that were advocates for, yes, we
Yeah,
can have a moment
right.
in the presence of Jesus that heals us, and we can have a moment of a journey with Jesus through
Yeah,
therapy, through mental health, through learning how to process our emotions. Both can be true, right?
right.
And so I finally dove into therapy and dove into different modalities of therapy that help you reach the subconscious, and different
Mhm.
inner prayer healing can help with that too. There's different modalities that I was a part of that really help, because some people's trauma is before they can even remember, but
Right.
it's still real. It's still something they experienced. And whether they remember it consciously or not, they internalize some message about themselves, right? Because the way
Right.
that parent said that, or what name, was spoken over them. And so I just walked through a journey of renewing my mind I'm not the same person. I have nothing to prove now.
Yeah.
I, no longer am wrapped up in comparisons or in people pleasing or in, overanalyzing every text that someone, like so many things that I look back on that were entrapped, I was so entrapped in that.
Right.
I am walking in freedom now, but I also understand that I'm human,
Yeah.
and that therapy or prayer, all these things that we advocate for, it doesn't mean that you're going to be bulletproof. We're always going to be human. We're always going to have emotions. We're always going to have things that we walk through that we need to process. And so I think
Mhm.
also, yes, I'm walking in freedom, but I also understand now that I can have permission to be human and have that human
Mhm.
experience. That doesn't mean that I'm going to be bulletproof, and that doesn't mean that there aren't going to be things that come along that hurt me.
Yeah.
But now I have the tools to be able to process them with the Lord, to process them with myself, and to be able to be honest about what's really going on the inside. And so I'm really passionate about helping people kind of take every thought captive, renew their mind with truth, walk that journey of therapy if they need to.
Yeah.
I think I am excited about the future of the church. I'm excited because more churches are really adopting
Yes.
mental health and
Yes.
understanding that we can have both and we can
Mhm.
walk in both. And so I'm excited to see the healthiest version of the church that we've ever seen.
Ugh,
So,
that's so refreshing to hear, because I think, for me, it's one of those things that I've been doing church my whole life. And I've seen the ebbs and flows where even in my own trauma, it was so swept under the rug.
yeah,
It was almost shameful, if you will. And
yeah,
so I see the church evolving into an acceptance,
yeah,
if you will, of mental health,
yes,
of counseling, of
yes,
therapy, and at the same time still believing that prayer and just the community, the
yes,
laying on of hands, if you will, there is just a beauty in that
yes,
obviously honestly the world just doesn't have.
yes,
And
yes,
so that's honestly something that we have to be excited about as Christians, because we
yes,
have something that the world doesn't, and such.
yes.
So trauma,
Mhm.
that is a very big word in society today, and in the
Yes.
Christian um arena, if you will. It is something that has taken ahead, and you phrase it just as well: bulletproof. It doesn't matter. There is still an enemy that will be on your shoulder and will
Yes.
just remind you of
Mhm.
either decisions you made or decisions that you didn't have a choice, but somebody did them for you.
Yeah.
And so it's trauma.
Yeah.
And so tell me something that I know for me, it's that why. Why, God?
Mhm.
Why did this happen to me? Why did you allow this to happen?
Mm.
Talk me through how your experience, if you experienced that, and what that looked like for you to get to a place where you've sought, like, I need therapy to talk this out.
Yeah. So, about 3.5 years ago, we took in a sibling set. So, two children who
Mhm.
were in foster care.
Mhm.
And we fostered them for 7 months and adopted. So, like I said, was unconventionally adopted. My husband was adopted at birth. And that was always the plan, is that we wanted to continue that. So, adoption and bio family and adoptive family, we have it on my side, we have it on my husband's side, we have it on two of my kids' side. It's like just a
Wow.
language that is spoken in our home that's very normal. Adoption's not a bad word. Like,
Right.
that's just a part of our family.
Mhm.
Like, we
Mhm.
have a really big, blended, beautiful family, but it's
Incredible.
complicated and layered
Sure.
because of trauma. So
Mhm.
everyone likes to glamorize adoption, but the reason why they need to be adopted is because they've been through trauma.
Very true.
And so there's that element to why I felt like I couldn't wait any longer to go to therapy, because some of their trauma was popping up that
Mhm.
was triggering stuff that I had been through that I hadn't worked through
You
yet.
hadn't worked through
So
yet.
talk about being forced to
Mhm.
confront your own trauma and deal with your own trauma, because I can't help anybody out of a pit that I'm not out of myself.
Oh, so
And
good.
so I can't sit there and comfort them and help them regulate if I haven't processed that very same thing that I walked through with my parents or my trauma. And so to be able to dive into that, and honestly, God's word and his Holy Spirit, I just don't know how people could walk it without it. And to be
Mhm.
able to comfort them with some of those truths,
Mhm.
that even if they can't believe that I am never going to leave them, right? Even if it's
Mhm.
hard for them to believe that because everyone's left them, to
Mhm.
be able to say there is a God in heaven who will never leave you and never forsake you is
Mhm.
such a powerful truth for them to grab hold of. And I know it was for me too. But there's this doctor who talks about trauma in a really unique way that I'd never heard about before. He said, trauma is anything that's too much, too fast, or too soon.
Mm.
And I think that that's so unique. And I love that description because we often confuse trauma as a traumatic event, which
Yeah.
is something that happened that was violent or
Mhm.
horrific, or maybe we haven't been through a traumatic event. Maybe we
Mhm.
can look back and we say I had a great childhood. I don't
Right.
why do I have all these struggles? It
Right.
doesn't mean that you don't have trauma. It doesn't mean that you didn't experience something that was too much, too fast, too soon, or that you internalized in a wrong way. And it could have
Mhm.
been something that your mom she was well intended that she
Mhm.
said,
Mhm.
but you internalized it in a way that was too much, too fast, too soon, or in a way that was twisted, in a way that was never you were never meant to internalize that. And so it's so important for everyone to be able to recognize those narratives that form, those
Yeah.
lies that form. Like you said,
Right.
the enemy will use those and
Mhm.
he'll try to grow those in our lives. And so the more that we can lean in to those and face our trauma head on. So many people are afraid to face it on because they think, oh, if I start the waterworks, I'm never going to stop crying. Like, it's
Right.
very scary
Right.
because you know that there's something going on in there and you don't want it to be a volcano, right?
Right.
But the reality is, like, there really is peace on the other side.
Mhm.
And your podcast, Fearless Forward, we
Yeah.
have to be able to face that trauma
Yeah.
fearlessly. We have
Yep.
to be able to face it and know that God is going to be right there with us. And it's so powerful when you find a counselor who can integrate your faith with you and say, where was Jesus when that happened?
Yeah.
And be able to you see it completely differently when you realize God never left you,
And
right? And that
oh,
he was there all along, and
yes.
that, he's bigger than our questions. He's
Right.
bigger than the whys that we may never get answered. He's so much bigger and his presence is so much better. So
Yes.
I would just say, don't be afraid, lean into it, because there really is a piece on the other side that is
Mhm.
better than you can imagine.
Yeah. I think and it's so good because you walk in I remember in my own trauma, and I had childhood trauma with my father and such, but walking in that under the rug, not allowed to
Yeah.
talk about it, in the same home still, growing up this way, and had really walked through a divorce and things because I didn't know who I really was. I
Mm,
didn't know if I was loved. I didn't know all those things, and it wasn't until
yeah.
I had a woman come up to me and said, "You know what? I wanna counsel you," and she was in the church.
Wow.
And to just be able to confide and
Yeah.
trust is a big deal for people that have dealt with trauma. I
Yeah.
think it is because you can only you give little snippets of your heart, but you don't give your full heart away
Yeah.
because you have been hurt, because
Mhm.
you don't know who you can trust. Sometimes you don't even trust yourself. And so I think those are big, big things. So I want to ask you this question. How have you navigated maintaining your own identity and healing process during the season of transition?
Well, I had to break free from codependency, and if people are
Ooh,
not familiar with that word, it means that if someone else in your life is not happy, then you're not happy. If someone else is not okay, then you're like, you absorb. And I had to learn, even with my kids, how to observe, but not absorb. I was an
Mm,
absorber.
mhm, mhm. Yeah.
And I think, I know probably a lot of your listeners are wives and moms, and it's really easy to lose ourselves
Yeah.
in motherhood and in being a wife, and without even realizing it. We
Yeah.
realize that we've really lost a lot of the essence of just who we are as an individual because we're
Mhm.
so wrapped. I mean, that's why they say when people, when your kids leave the nest, there's like this
Yeah, this
meltdown,
voice.
it's crisis
Absolutely.
of identity because
Right.
our lives were so intertwined, but it's so, so important to have your own individual path and faith. And I remember there was this therapy session, it was an EMDR, and I think there's a lot of misconceptions about EMDR
Mhm.
and the Christian. You're not
Yeah.
hypnotized, you're not unconscious or anything weird. It's really very simple.
Yeah.
You're following a laser with your eyes because the movement of activation from right to left with your eyes is activating the two different parts of your brain.
Mhm.
And you're talking about your traumatic memories while you're following that,
Yeah.
just to simply activate different parts of your brain while you're talking about it. It's not anything woo-woo.
It's not
It's
woo-woo.
not, it's really
Right.
not.
Right.
We need to kind of combat these myths in
Right.
order for people to receive some of the healing. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about reaching the subconscious, doing therapeutic techniques that reach the subconscious,
Yeah.
because there were things that I couldn't reason my way out of, you
Right.
know?
Yeah. No.
And so in this particular EMDR session, this was the most powerful I've ever felt. God's presence was at the end of that session, and my therapist was a Catholic in his
Wow.
60s, and
Wow.
he used to be an accountant, and when he was, like, in his 50s, he changed career paths after his
Interesting.
kids were going off to college and became a therapist. And, you know, he's very analytical, Catholic former accountant, so
Wow.
not kind of the type of person that you would think would be like, "I feel the
Yeah.
presence of God right now," but
Yeah.
even he said
He wasn't doing math, but he was still trying to solve problems.
yes.
Right? Right? Well, explain to us a little bit more what EMDR is. I think because one of the things I want to accomplish with Fearless Forward is,
Mhm.
mind, body, spirit. And I'm an old ORU grad, and it's kind of one of those things where I believe that it's all encompassing. It's not
Yes.
just about the spirit,
Yes.
but we have to also know that God built our body certain ways, certain neutrons, things like that, the
Yeah.
science backing, if you will. So explain to go a little bit deeper into that EMDR.
Yeah. Well, the way I understand it, it was originated because a woman was working with war veterans and working through PTSD with them. And she recognized that through walking and the movement of their eyes back and forth, that there was a dramatic increase in the way that they were able to process their trauma. So it's really not anything woo-woo. It's not, and there's a lot of misconceptions
Yeah,
about it. You're
right.
you're not hypnotized. It's not anything like that. It's just simply following a laser back and forth with your eyes
Hmm.
while you while you go back to traumatic memories.
Hmm.
And because of that eye movement back and forth, you're activating two different parts of your brain.
Brain.
And so instead of just talking about it and reaching the conscious mind, you
Hmm.
actually are able to reach the unconscious mind. So
Hmm.
I was doing an EMDR session with this therapist, and he told me to go back and write down a statement of truth, something that felt true to me. And he gave me the specific topic that we were going to tackle in that
Mhm,
EMDR session. So it could be rejection, it could be
mhm,
abandonment, it could
mhm.
be insecurity, and you would walk through all of those different memories of the earliest time that you can remember that you felt rejected all the way to the most recent
Wow.
while you're following the laser.
Mhm,
It's almost like you're opening up a file in your computer that you haven't
mhm.
touched in a long time. You haven't
Yeah,
touched since you were a kid, right?
yeah.
And then you open up that file and you're able to edit it with God's help, and then
Wow.
process it from a healthy angle
Right,
and then put that file back again.
right.
And so we went through all these memories, and at the end, I had a couple scriptures that I had sort of combined to make my statement of truth, and he asked me to speak it out loud, and I did, and I said, "God is the upholder of my life and the defender of my heart." I had a lot of fears about the future. I had a lot of fears about what ifs, worst case
Mhm.
scenarios.
Mhm.
And that statement meant God is the upholder of my life. He's the one who holds it all together.
Mhm.
And even if my worst fears happen, He's going to be the defender of my heart. He's going to be
Mhm.
the one that gathers all the pieces and helps put them back together
Yeah.
and heals me.
Right.
So I can trust Him now, but I can also trust Him with my tomorrows. And that was a huge revelation for me that I needed to not just believe in my head, but I needed
Right.
to absorb that truth.
Mhm.
And that really broke me free from for some reason, I don't know why, because the statement isn't necessarily related to other people, but
Right.
it broke me free from codependency. Something about that I was able to process those memories in
Yeah.
that session.
Yeah.
At the end of it, when I said that out loud, the presence of God was so strong. I didn't even want to move a centimeter in my chair because I didn't wanna ruin it, like,
Yeah.
it was just so, so, so tender and so
Yeah.
close, and so my therapist, this accountant, Catholic, former accountant,
Right.
he was like, "What's coming up for you right now?" And I just with tears streaming down my face was like, "I just feel God's presence so strong right now."
Mhm.
And he said with tears in his eyes, "I do too." And we just sat there together in such a holy moment. And
Wow.
I can't even put words, when you've encountered God's presence in that way, there's not even words to
No,
describe
never. Right.
that would do it justice.
Yeah.
But all I can say is that I walked out of that office different. I walked out of that office and there was this thought that kept coming to my mind that I haven't been able to shake since that feels so true and so real to me that I never considered before. And it's that I get to choose how I want to show up in the world.
Mhm.
I get to choose
Right.
how I want to live and walk and conduct myself and present. I get to choose how I walk with integrity. I get to choose how I walk with God. I
Yes.
can't control anyone else's choices, not my
Yes.
kids, not my husband, not all the people at my friends, my extended family, adopted bio. Like
Right.
I can't I can't control. I can do my best to sow seeds. I can do my best to pour into, but I can't it's their life and their path,
Mm.
but I get to choose mine,
Yes.
and I get to choose how I'm gonna show up, and there was something so empowering about that, that you asked about how do I find my identity in the midst of all the
Mhm.
transitions.
Mhm.
That's my anchor of truth right there, is that I get to choose.
Yeah.
I get to choose how I show up. I get to
Yes.
choose how I walk in integrity,
Yes.
and if someone else wants to make a different choice, they're the ones that have to be held accountable or answer to that or
Mhm.
walk in that or suffer the
Mhm.
consequences of that. Like, I get to choose how I respond.
Yes.
I get to choose how I show up. And
Yes.
I think for whatever reason, wife, mom, all the labels that I hold, that is such an anchoring, powerful truth for
Yeah.
me that helps me stay centered in who I am in Christ and
Yeah.
how I want to show up,
This
if
is
that
why I
makes
love
sense.
you.
I love
This is
you.
why, because honestly, you have 101 everything from being a wife, a
Mhm.
mom, a woman, because that's all it is. It's the freedom to say, you know what, they choose. I don't
Yeah.
have to choose for them anymore.
Yeah.
And so there's just a peace in knowing that, and I think that's the bigger picture is you thrive on giving people these solutions, this peace that you have experienced because you've taken the steps, because you've spent the time to navigate through trauma to say, I want to be a better person than who I was.
Yeah.
Because what I see who I was, what the enemy wants to remind me who I was, but
Yeah.
yet God's plan is bigger and greater. And so I really do believe you are stepping into something completely brand new. Your conversations are just they're beautiful because you see a redemption. You
Yeah.
see a redeeming heart that you can say, I've walked through this. And because of your experience, you're able to talk to so many and really go, okay, I want what she's got. And I think and I pray we all
Yeah.
live that way. I think that's the thing. So, um, let me ask you this. What hopes or dreams do you have by using your story that you can encourage others or empower others that are going through these similar circumstances? You've talked so much about the circumstances you've gone through, but now
Mhm.
talk to the people that how is it that you want to help them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I've talked to you a little bit behind the scenes on
Mhm.
going through a season where my dreams sort of fell apart and I felt like I was looking at rubble. And for anyone who's been through that season and you're like, well, I thought that this was going to be the plan. And then it changes and you
Mhm.
feel like the rug got pulled out from underneath you. Uh, I felt like the little boy with the little fish and the 5 loaves who brought it to Jesus.
Right.
This is all I've
That's all
got.
I've got.
This is all I've got. So, I feel like the past few years have been a rebuilding of those dreams and trying to
Mhm.
figure out what God wants from all this brokenness and to
Mhm.
take brick by brick, and I only had 1 brick. I was like, "I know I like to write. That's all I got, God. That's all I got." Everything else doesn't look the way I thought it would.
Yes.
Everything else is sorta out of my control, but, like, I'm just gonna give you this little brick that I have.
Yeah.
Let's rebuild from here.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I'm working with right now, but what I'm finding is that a lot of us want clarity on the dream right away before
Yeah.
we take steps, and what
Mhm.
I'm learning is that the clarity comes once you take the step, and that's not what we wanna do because it's
Right.
easier to be in our comfort zone and try
Mhm.
to say, "God, give me the whole plan first."
Yep.
But it's in the taking of the steps that I feel like I'm finding my voice
Yes.
and I'm finding the people that I can help with my
Yes.
voice and my story. And I'm still in the process of that.
Mhm.
But I think that God doesn't want to waste what I've been through. And
Never.
so I don't know how he's going to use it just yet, but
Yeah.
I know that there is a strength and an empowerment that I think I have now that I didn't have before. And I thought I had it, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Because in many circles, marriage is the end all be all, right?
Right.
If we get married and we have
Right.
kids and
We've
we've
arrived.
arrived. But Jesus is our source, not
Right.
marriage, not motherhood, not all these
Mhm.
things that we
Mm-mm.
thought that were gonna bring us
Yeah.
wholeness and completeness. And so I think there's a strength and empowerment that I want to offer women outside of their roles as
Mhm.
wife, as mom, as caretaker, as taxi cab driver, as soup stirrers,
Right.
whatever it is that your day to day looks like. Outside of all of that, there's a strength and an empowerment that I
Mm.
feel like is going to be translated.
Yes.
Like I'm learning how to find my voice. I'm learning how to teach the principles. I'm learning how to sometimes it's like you've walked through something, but how do I translate that and put
Mhm.
it into words for somebody and
Mhm.
then give them the steps to walk it too,
Yep.
you know? And I
Yeah.
think that I'm in the process of that, but I know that there's a strength that I have now that I want every woman to have. I
Yeah.
want every woman to know no matter what her children do, no matter what her husband, no matter
Right.
what her pastor did, no matter
Yeah.
what her friend and the way the friend showed up and betrayed her, whatever other people's choices are, there
Right.
isn't a strength and an empowerment for you, an unshakable anchor in God's strength that is
Mhm.
available to you,
Mhm.
that will give you the ability to walk through no matter what other people do, say, or
Mhm.
come at you with.
Yeah.
There's a strength there that you can walk and say, well, this is how I'm choosing to show up.
Yes. It comes down to identity.
Yeah.
How do you identify yourself, right? Because you talked about it being a mom, being a wife, being a
Yeah.
caretaker, all the things. But in reality, we all go through seasons
Yeah.
and we may season through our mothering and then they grow up and then we have a new season that comes
Yeah.
ahead. But God just always reminds us that he knows us.
Yeah.
He's got us in the palm of his hand. He's created us.
Yes.
And so I think those are the things that I get excited about. I know people don't know how we met, but we met at a writers
We
conference
did.
and in Charlotte, right?
Yes. Yes.
And we just kind of had a mutual connection, and that mutual connection said, "You guys need to meet." And it's
Yeah.
really just been a classic community of friendship, if you
Yes.
will, that's been built and stuff. And so we were both in a contest, and I had won the contest, and she was like, "Okay," but we prayed for each other, and I didn't win. But it's a matter of just we were cheering each other on, and
Yeah.
we're cheerleaders for each other.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's just a huge thing that I
Yeah.
think women need is to know that we have each other's back and
Yes.
that we are cheering for each other. So as you are writing, I think you're on Substack, right?
Yes. Hmm.
but as you're writing, and I think you have a new book maybe coming out or something?
Yes. So what really took me by surprise is when we got the kids, right? The completion of our family. This was a dream, like 5 years in the making to
Yeah.
complete our family. Moved to Florida for a great ministry opportunity, had all these prayers come true all at once, and yet it was the most disoriented I've ever felt in my life. Part of it is because I needed to go therapy,
Right,
okay?
right.
It was but those things can trigger, right? Good
Right,
changes
right.
can trigger, an emotional response we weren't expecting, an
Yeah.
emotional weight we weren't expecting. To carry out something that we prayed for in the natural can be very different than praying for it in the spiritual,
Yeah.
and I am writing a book about that process, about how even good change is hard, and we can give ourselves permission to walk through that and process it with God. Life changes, like you said, seasons shift,
Right.
but God never does. And God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And He is the unchanging one that we can cling to and we can build our lives on. So that's what the book's about. It won't be out until 2026. It's a long process of
Yes.
editing and working with a publisher. I have a publisher now, which is exciting to say.
Wow.
So
You
going
won the
back and forth.
contest.
There's no contest.
I
No, no contest.
I definitely gives me reason to have you back several times before
Yes,
the book. So
yes.
I'm
Oh, that
really,
would be
really
awesome.
excited about that.
That would be great.
Here's what I want you to do. I want you to give one thing that you want the listener to take away today from today's
So,
conversation. What's the one thing? And I didn't give you this on the notes,
yeah.
but what is the one thing that you want the listener from today's conversation to know?
Don't be afraid to lean in to the hard emotions, the hard truths, the hard traumas. They don't define you. They're not going to be so heavy that you can't bear them. Find someone that is a believer who can walk you through, a Christian counselor, perhaps, something like that. I'll give you a list of some of the
Okay.
resources and helpful
Perfect.
things.
Yes.
Memorizing scripture was huge for me as well, and
Mhm.
being able to declare truths when I didn't feel them,
Mhm.
when they didn't feel real, to
Yeah.
be able to continue to declare it, repeat it until I believe it.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to lean in
Yeah.
and say, you know
So
what,
good.
this doesn't have to define me or control me anymore.
Mhm.
If you're being controlled by things and you're thinking, I'm overanalyzing every text, I overanalyze when someone doesn't text me back.
Yeah.
I keep saying yes to everything and I'm burnout and I don't understand why. I'm always overwhelmed. I'm, struggling with my emotions don't match sometimes my
Mhm.
reality and I feel like I'm going to cry and I don't even know why for no
Mhm.
reason, right?
Right.
The
Right.
emotions are just right up there.
Yeah.
It's time to start learning how, and it might be messy. It
Yeah.
might be like a little toddler, like learning how to talk, and it might feel like you're fumbling your way through, but
Right.
it's so, so worth it. And if you go through the process, then you realize that there is a whole other mental freedom there
Mhm. Yeah.
that was exhausting before, that
Yes.
doesn't have to be a daily reality, that you can actually have more margin in your emotions and your mental health for
Mhm.
the things of God, the things
Mhm.
that you really feel passionate about, that you really want to do, but you
Mhm.
can't do because you're bogged down by all this other stuff.
Mhm.
And you can't see clearly what you are supposed to do, what you're
Yeah.
called to do, what you're not supposed to do, because you're so busy trying to make everyone else happy. And
Right.
there is a better way to live. There's
Yes.
a better way to think. There's a better way to wake up in the morning
Mhm.
than dreading the
Mhm.
day or counting down the minutes until bedtime.
Yes.
There is freedom. There
Yes.
is, and it's a journey. It's not a one stop. It is a
Yes.
journey, but freedom is available. And don't be afraid. Lean into it. Fearless forward, right?
Fearless forward. I love you.
I love
I'm
you.
so glad you came
I
today.
know.
We are going to have you back.
That'd be great.
No doubt. But
That'd be great.
here's the thing. I'm hearing you talk and I just say, you are a breath of fresh air.
Oh,
You
thank
really
you.
are. And I know God's going to do some amazing things in 2025 with
Thank
you.
you.
Do you not just love her? I mean, I'm telling you, I believe in your ability to make a fearless life. And I also believe that we are needing to do more in the church, more with trauma, more with understanding people and giving them resources and giving them help and counseling, whatever they need, the therapies that are out there that may be the one missing piece of the puzzle that they need to have. Yes, obviously, I believe in prayer. Yes, I know there needs to be a boldness to be able to come out of the mindset of the thinking of where we can be depressed, where we can suffer through some trauma issues. And I know that God is a greater than our circumstances, but some people stay stuck. And so I just love Melissa, and I love the fact that she has brought some questions and had some really good conversations. But if you love this conversation, I think you're going to love this one next.